The remaining issue in what changed from the unaired pilot of Game of Thrones to the aired TV series version is that both of the sex scenes in it were very different. Daenerys Drogo and Jaime Cersei, both of which touch on issues of rape. So I'm not using a lot of screenshots in this, you understand. It's mostly going to be text on screen because I'm trying not to be gratuitous. I mean, rewatch if you need to look at the mechanics of, wait, how exactly were they conveying information in this scene? But I don't need to repeat that here. Do that on your own. The Dany Drogo one is pretty short here just because we already knew about this. Martin told us a year ago that in the books, Drogo doesn't rape Daenerys. I mean, she's scared, but ultimately, she's overtly saying yes, drawing him closer, putting his hand on her in between her thighs, etc. And it's weird because she's very young by our standards. This is medieval society. They do point out in the same chapter, she's kind of young for Drogo, going that she's had her blood. She's started menstruating in our culture. That makes her an adult. And it's a little weird for us, and even book people criticize this a little bit. It's a medieval society. They say she is technically an adult, but the point is that's how the books played it, with her saying yes, drawing him closer. It's very different from how the TV showed it. You can argue about the book version separately. It's just the TV version isn't like that, even like that. That in the TV version, she's just crying. She never says yes. She doesn't try to draw him closer. He actually has to pull her hands apart as she's shielding herself gently. It's not like he's violently attacking her, but she's not consenting to this, really. And I first watched the first episode downloaded in a dorm room with two other female students, and I was uncomfortable in this scene, but just seeing how physically they were reacting, deeply distressed by this scene, hammered home to me more than just watching it on my own. This is really not comfortable for female viewers. It just, I'm not as, on my own, from my own experience, that doesn't hit me as much for seeing a woman in this position. But point is, in a season 7 red carpet interview, George R. R. Martin stated that the pilot version was just like in the books. In the TV version, this was Drogo basically marital raping Daenerys, and Benioff and Weiss themselves openly call it rape in the commentary, so let's not get into a discussion of that. They themselves admit, well, this is technically marital rape. And I'm trying to go by the evidence here. We already knew that Martin had said that. I'd already updated the wiki article to say Martin said that the pilot version was just like in the books. And yes, the script that just came to light from his Cushing Library archive that he submitted there of the pilot script, yes, his pilot script confirms what he said verbally, that yes, the Dany Drogo scene is like in the books. So, all this build-up, when asked, why did the change happen, Martin only said, you'll have to ask David and Dan about that. Ask Benioff and Weiss, and that is the trick, isn't it? They don't really give interviews like that. Now, I talked before in the Catalan part of this about how I think propaganda in, police states, cults, and abusive relationships have a lot of similar features in breaking down someone. It's just a difference of scale. I think of cults like Scientology, documentaries I've seen on that, and how they program people into believing things and following the leader. And a major feature of cult deprogramming I've heard of through these things is for a former member to share with you how they got duped. The impact of seeing major former Scientology leaders saying this thing is a goddamn cult and I got tricked into following it and I'm ashamed I ever hurt other people for the sake of it. That has a lot of impact. So, if we ever get a high-level defection of one of the Game of Thrones directors or the props department who is not abused with all the schedule problems they've had, if Michelle Clapton or Sapochnik came out one day and said, this guy is an idiot, Benioff has no idea what he's doing, that will have significant impact. That it had impact when, the Stannis actor said, I have no idea what we are doing here. Their writing makes no sense. And people remember that for Stannis. When the Stannis actor's going, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't understand the writing on this. So, rather than attacking you guys on this, I'm going to try the approach of saying, yes, I myself for years was duped. That's why I'm so angry. Through season 5, I was defending Benioff and Weiss because I wanted the show to be good. I kept rationalizing changes they made, not just this. I believe this. I thought they're professional writers. They know what they're doing. They must have sat down and had a discussion with the other writers. What other writers? There are no other writers. They didn't have a discussion. Then I'm going to actually check that, no, these are things we did spur of the moment right before we filmed. This wasn't a process. But I myself wanted to believe all of this. Other things like, oh, well, they must have invented that Cersei had a baby before Joffrey, who died, because they wanted to make her more sympathetic, or they wanted it for plot reasons, when it's, I think they were just showing off Lena Headey doing a sympathetic performance at this point. But that I was rationalizing good reasons for them to be making other changes. Of, oh, this is streamlining it. And by the end of season 5, I really couldn't, and I kept thinking, even then I thought, oh, they must be streamlining things. Then in the season 6 premiere, they killed Doran Martell, and by the end of season 6, Sansa did not play a significant role in defeating Ramsay Bolton. And I went, this isn't just streamlining, something weird is happening in their perception of this. I sat down to watch DVD commentaries and realized these are crazy people shilling the actors. But what frightens me is how much, for over 4 years, I had drunk the Kool-Aid. I was defending them. So if you are scared to admit it yourself, admit it even to yourself, much less in public, that they played us for fools, and I wanted to believe them rather than admit they tricked me for so long. And this was difficult for me. It'll be difficult for you, but I was part of the cult. And in this case, the rationalization I put up for years, even on the wiki, was they did this to reflect modern sensibilities. It's a 16-year-old girl in an arranged marriage eagerly having sex with a much older man, would have been the book version, which brings up statutory rape stuff. They are medieval culture. So would showing her as eager like that have been gratuitous? Because, we don't think a girl that young can consent. That is an issue that is complicated when you're presenting a medieval society. That's what I wanted to believe, and it's not just a theory I had, I accepted it as a given. What I'm criticizing is that surety, rather than evidence-based research. That we have no idea if they ever did this due to sensitivity. They never said anything about it, and they should have in interviews. But on the other hand, and this is crucial, we also have no confirmation that they're evil misogynists with a master plan to include as much rape as possible because they hate women. Follow me on this, trying to explain. A major feature of propaganda, cults, and abusive relationships, beyond just don't ask questions, is to get the victim dependent on the abuser. Get them to a point where they want to trust and believe the abuser. Like, I grew up with domestic violence in the home from my father against my mother, and there were points when I wanted to believe him when he'd make up excuses. And I remember being in that mindset of wanting to believe what I knew wasn't true. Because he was trustworthy to me. And this happening, I've seen this in like the Scientology documentaries where they go, I was making up all sorts of rationalizations and excuses for why we were doing this to people. Lying to someone who wants to trust you is easy. That's the trick. We think of, it's coming up with a really complex lie. It's about being unscrupulous. About being willing to lie to your wife, to your children, to your followers. They make up their own rationalizations for what you're doing. That's the trick. Get them to want to believe you. And you remember the season 1 invented, not from the books, written by Benioff and Weiss, scene with Littlefinger? The infamous sexposition scene where he's explaining to the prostitutes how he's going to trick Ned Stark? Well, he's talking about how, no, you don't fake your orgasm like that. The way you fake it for a man is get him to believe that he's won you over. And he's using it as a metaphor for Ned, that he's saying the way to trick Ned isn't to come up with a convincing lie, but to be nice to him and friendly and kind of trick him into thinking that Ned's honor and goodness have won me over to his side, selling a narrative, basically. Even though, based on the evidence, he's not really giving him firm proof that, yes, I will have the Gold Cloaks fight for you, that he just convinces him that he won him over, that, I'm loyal to you now. And it's really creepy to me in hindsight, I keep coming back to this, that Benioff and Weiss were able to convey this concept with such accuracy. That the way to lie to people in cults, abusive relationships, if you've ever had like a boyfriend who was cheating on you but you didn't want to admit it and made up excuses, like what? Wives who go, oh no, my husband has to go work for his CIA undercover job every weekend. He's not having an affair. It's get people to a point where they're dependent on you and want to believe you, and you don't even need to make a lie, because no lie you could make up will be as believable as the one they custom tailor for themselves, because they're the ones that made it. Everyone he's ever lied, they do this all the time. There's video of this I have and other things of saying, Benioff boasting, I lied to Martin that I knew how to make a pilot when I didn't by just puffing myself up and acting really confident. To HBO about the pilot, as I was talking about earlier, of course I know how to run a pilot. And like for the season 8 budget, not everyone lies a little, saying, oh, it's actually twice as much as I ever told them it would be. In season 3, he was actively saying, I'm going to wait until we're 7 seasons deep, and they trust me enough to reveal to them it's too late to stop. Season 8 will be the cost of a movie trilogy. That it's wait, and they would make excuses for him through that. That's how this works. The fact that they don't give interviews is part of the plan, because they could never make up a convincing lie for this. Their followers will just make up their own. And I said this is related to, if you've seen my Stannis video, which got a lot of views, Benioff often employs cold reading in his interviews. We have this on video. When he was talking about, someone asked him about the Jaime Cersei rape scene in season 4, and just, was this a rape scene or not? And cold reading is you rattle off a bunch of alternate answers. It's what TV psychics do. And then you let the mark pick the one they think is the most believable. Then fixate only on that reason and ignoring the other potential reasons you just listed off, which suddenly are being ignored. And the mark, the victim, chooses not to focus on those, to focus on the one that was kind of accurate. It works only because the victim wants to believe you. They make up their own excuses for you. So just getting around to this with the Dany Drogo one, I don't know, and in isolation, because this is very different circumstances due to her young age, maybe it's possible every other rape scene in the show is done for gratuitous reasons, but at the same time, they're human beings. This one wasn't, just because no one's 100% bad all the time. Maybe this was purely because they thought they'd get in trouble for, this looks weird that she's so young and into it. That is entirely possible. It's also possible they did it because they thought it was cool. I don't know, and the bigger question isn't, was it because they were gratuitous or not, but why didn't we look for evidence of this? Why didn't anyone ask them directly?